one of the most important things as you are getting towards retirement or in retirement is to have a financial plan. And many people advocate that the best way to develop one of those is with the use of a financial advisor. But do you really need one? Let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Andre. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. And if you are returning, thank you as always so much for coming back. Truly, truly appreciate it. All right, so let's talk about financial advisors. Now, first of all, what is a financial advisor? Unfortunately, the term financial advisor is fairly generic. So you have some people who are CFPs, Certified Financial Planning professionals, and they've been certified in the art of financial planning. But you can have, somebody with an MBA or somebody with a CPA or, somebody who is just a Joe's financial planning service, I'm just making that up. But anybody can hang out a shingle and say, I'm a financial advisor. So we have to be careful if we're going to choose to work with somebody that there is some sort of vetting process, whether by referral, by looking up reviews online or whatever it might be, to say that this person is actually capable of helping us actually formulate a good, solid financial plan. So the term financial advisor, generic, I want to stress that, and anybody can say they're a financial advisor. I could just say, hey, I'm a financial advisor, but as I often say on here, I am not certified in anything. Got some bugs around here, sorry. I'm not certified in anything. I don't have any fancy letters behind my name. I'm just sharing with you my thoughts. Wanted to go over here some of the pros and cons of working with a financial advisor. All right, so pros. A financial advisor can offer a comprehensive strategy based on your needs. A really good financial advisor will sit down with you, identify what your needs are and work with you to formulate a plan as to how to actually implement and get you to those goals to meet those needs that you have. They can provide clarity and help you stick to a plan once you've picked out a plan and so on, and they're working with you and they say, okay, hey, this is what we're going to do. These are investments that I suggest. Here's how much money you can spend this month, etc. They will handle your portfolio management, so you no longer have to make any sort of decisions about, oh, should I buy this stock? Should I buy this ETF or mutual fund? Should I sell this at this time? Your financial advisor should be working with you to do that for you. Those are the pros, but there are cons. Many financial advisors have expensive and confusing fees. You'll hear me, and I've talked about it on here before, and we're going to get more into this later, about the vaunted assets under management. They may have a fixed fee. They may work on commissions based on selling you various products that their company sells, etc. So you want to work with, when you're choosing financial advisors, make sure that you know how they're being compensated, because they are going to be compensated in some way, and that you are okay with that method of compensation. Qualifications, like I said before, anybody can hang out a shingle and say, hey, I'm a financial advisor. There's no, sort of testing. There's no sort of licensing that happens. Anybody can be, hey, I say I'm a financial advisor. I'm a financial advisor. So we want to be very careful about who we're working with. And not every financial advisor may be the right fit for you. If you have a financial advisor who's accustomed to working with folks that have, more than $10 million in assets, and you come along and you have, $500,000 in assets, they may not know how to work with you and make best use of the assets that you have available, because they're just not accustomed to working with your level of clientele. Nothing wrong with that. They just may not be the right fit for you. Pros of handling a financial advisor? Absolutely. They are supposed to be hyper-focused on helping you get the goals that you are trying to accomplish accomplished. That's it. So let's take a little deeper look into, what financial advisors are supposed to bring to the table. They are going to be looking at, what assets do you have available? What's your time horizon for when you want to implement the plan that you are working on? When are you planning to take Social Security? What might you be looking at in terms of Roth conversions, tax planning? When am I going to be able to, take money out of my accounts based on my age, etc.? they are going to be looking at all of these things. Now, all of these things are things that I could do myself. You know, you can do it yourself and so on there, but you may not be as well versed in what all of the things that one has to pay attention to, and that is why you would hand off this responsibility to a financial advisor. That person then, you know, should be familiar with all the tax laws, including these changes that just happened here very recently, so on there, and they can guide us through these types of things. And that's a really good thing to be able to hand that off to and pay somebody for being able to guide us through that. Can we do it ourselves? Absolutely. But we oftentimes just say, I just want to hand it off. And as we talked about on here before, you know, hey, if I could change the oil on my car myself, but oftentimes I just want to say, look, let me hand it off to somebody else, let them do it. I could mow the lawn myself, I could, you know, do a home repair or whatever, but sometimes it's just easier to hire a professional to do that. They can help you stick to the plan. That is sometimes one of the toughest things for us to do. You know, we've invested all this money and we've set out a nice plan and so on, and then the stock market drops 10 or 15%. And, you know, our gut reaction might be, oh, sell everything, get out, I can't afford all of this bleeding. And they may be able to talk you down off that ledge to say, hey, we're not planning for next week or next month. This plan is for 10 years from now or 30 years from now, you know, there, and be able to guide you as to when it is best and how it is best to manage your assets long-term on the time horizon that you have. Working with a disciplined advisor takes the emotional stress out of it, you know. So they are going to be helpful and be able to guide you and say, let's do this and let's not do that, and hopefully take emotions out of the equation. A good financial advisor puts your interests first. So I talked earlier about fiduciary. To have a fiduciary relationship means that the person who's a fiduciary to you has your interests at heart above even their own. So they are not focused on, you know, hey, how much money can I make off of this customer or this client, but how can I best position this client to have the best results that I'm capable of guiding them to. And that is something that is very difficult to find somebody that you are comfortable with who's truly a fiduciary to you. One of the best ways to do that is to look for fee-only financial advisors as opposed to advisors that work on assets under management. I talked about this earlier, and I've mentioned this in other videos. I am not a fan. I'm not a fan at all. So let's talk about that a bit. An advisor that takes a portion of your assets each year, assets under management, to me is oftentimes really cutting into the growth potential of your assets. So for example, if I have $1 million in assets that my financial advisor is managing for me under an assets under management agreement, and they are taking 1% of my assets each year. That first year, I have $1 million, their fee is going to be $10,000. Let's say that following year, I've had 10% in gains, and now my assets are $1.1 million. That next year, they're going to take $11,000 of my asset base. And so it continues to grow. So over a 10, 15, 20-year period, I could have paid this advisor $100,000, $200,000, which could have been still in my pocket, still in my asset mix, to be able to continue to be working towards my retirement. That's kind of tough for me to swallow. As has been shown over and over again, fund managers, asset managers, etc., very rarely beat the S&P 500 or just the stock market in general. So when I look at this situation of saying I spent over a 20-year period, let's say $200,000 to get ultimately returns that very rarely will actually outstrip the market of what I could just have gotten myself by putting my money into a couple of ETFs or maybe an S&P 500 mutual fund or some such. I really have a major problem with that, but it is one of the options that is out there. Many people work in that type of an arrangement. They're very comfortable with that type of arrangement. Mine is not to judge. You do what you are comfortable with, but I want to give pros and cons here. When you go to choose a financial advisor, how do you do it? You could, go to Google, financial advisor in my area, and get a thing there. You can look on Yelp for reviews. You can talk to friends, families, maybe your parents, advisors that they have used, etc. That's probably the best way, to get reviews of who's been working with a particular advisor and how they feel that they've been treated, that they have been able to get, what it is that they wanted out of that relationship with that advisor. Absolutely, that's the best way to do it, as opposed to just generically kind of dropping a finger on a list and saying, oh, I'm going to go with this person. All right, so just some food for thought. So let's kind of try to wrap this up here. I guess the big question, which hopefully I've not caused more confusion than I have helped to dispel, but should I work with a financial advisor? The answer, as always, is a definitive, it depends. If you want to hand over the management of your assets to a professional, somebody who's more familiar with the tax code, more familiar with asset management, more familiar with, planning for retirement and so on, absolutely, then financial advisors are a great resource to be able to hire and to say, hey, I want to hand this over to you and have you work with me, identify what my goals are, and then implement them for me. So it's absolutely one of the best ways to go forward in terms of getting yourself prepared for retirement and then executing within retirement. However, as I've said before, if you are willing to do some of that work yourself, then you may not need an actual quote-unquote financial advisor. You may need to hire a financial advisor in a much different capacity than a full-blown advisor relationship, but just maybe a consultant relationship. Here's the plan that I have developed. Can you take a look at it, spend a few hours or whatever, and obviously you'll be compensating that person for their time to say, hey, what do you think, and can you make any suggestions for me that might be worth changing within my particular plan? So that's certainly one way to go. I have chosen to go the DIY route for the most part. Yes, I absolutely run things by different people, colleagues. I work with a advisor at Fidelity, where most of our assets are, but I don't really consider that person to be my financial advisor the same way that would be if I hired an actual financial advisor. This is a person very well qualified who is a CFP, who I can run things by, and I get that as a benefit of being a customer of Fidelity. So I really take advantage of that at different times to say, hey, I need some guidance. How can you do that? But there's so many resources available online, lots of articles from, Money Magazine or Kiplinger Magazine or Barron's or what have you that I can turn to. YouTube, there's a plethora of videos out here, many put out by actual CFPs and financial advisors to help fill in some of the gaps as to what it is I can do to help me do this on my own. But I will say I spend a lot of time looking at videos, reading articles, talking to people and so on. You may not want to do that. I'll give you an example. My parents have a financial advisor that they have worked with for many years. They're very comfortable with that relationship. It's a very trusting and close relationship, and they don't make a move in their finances without talking to that financial advisor. That works for them. They are not interested in spending the kind of hours of time trying to figure out, well, what should I do here and what could do there and so on. Now, they do, double check that financial advisor at times, say, hey, we're thinking about doing this. They might ask me, or they might ask, other colleagues or whatever, what do you think about this? And then they make a decision. But it's always done in concert with their financial advisor. I don't operate that way, but I will absolutely say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. I talk to my wife, I talk to colleagues, I talk to my parents. I may reach out to my quote-unquote advisor at Fidelity and so on, and then make a move and decide what I want to do. Ultimately, the decision is up to you and to what you feel comfortable doing. So, bottom line, hiring a financial advisor can be a great move for you and your family, but you need to be clear what you want from that relationship. Once you have done that, then you can determine if you should get an advisor, and if so, what you want from that advisor. All right. That's it for this one. Thank you so much for stopping by. I truly appreciate it. If you have found anything in here interesting that resonates with you, I ask that you give it a like, that you share it with anybody else who it might also resonate with. And please, if you're not subscribed yet, please consider subscribing to the channel as we continue to try to grow. All of these things we continue to do. The channel is growing. I want to say a specific welcome to the newer subscribers who are joining us more recently with some of the growth that we have had. Thank you so much for becoming part of the family. Truly, truly appreciate that. That's it. All right. Thank you so much for stopping by. And as always, in Alita Times.